Tonight, the Nolan Wells investigation into the death of a shining star, Nolan Wells, has an altercation witness emerged. A witness that claims she saw an altercation at Horn Island.
This white woman right here is claiming that she was one of the last people who saw Nolan, and when she saw Nolan, he was involved in an altercation with somebody who, in her words, is going to go to jail based on what she witnessed. Now, somehow, some way, and a lot of you guys probably already suspect this, somehow, some way, Officer Tatum is involved somewhere in this equation, in which you will find out at some point in this video.
Sam here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update and some more mysterious letters that I'm reading to you. Again, I don't know if these are real, but I think it's important to share them. After others were forced to leave, the last few were trying to help, but they made them leave. Nolan had already taken his last gasps and was gargling blood. His last words were, "No, please, guys, I love you." Key notes: when Nolan yelled, that's when Evan's mom came down. Nolan's body was still warm when they started moving it to be stored. Nolan survived most of the attack. Ultimately, murder was intentional. He yelled, but barely. He saw his moments and memories flash, but his last memory was with his parents after winning a game, and he was happy and he was ready for the next season. Maybe memories was from his last game of his first year of college. Again, I don't know how this letter could possibly know what his last memory was, so again, we have to take it with a grain of salt. Nolan wanted nothing more than to have peace, even when it wasn't always reciprocated in certain instances. Wyatt was a primary aggressor, encouraging booze and drugs and hyping the others up to single out Nolan. Nolan had some sort of fun, but they left earlier than planned due to the boat having some sort of jerk or throttle issue happening while on the island. The boys planned to leave Nolan. He left the girl. He did spend a little time with her there. Wyatt and Warren were jealous, taunting that they would leave him, and made him swim not too far to the boat. They wanted him to swim through the current, dared him to, and Nolan waited for something current to pass and then swam to the boat approximately at 3:45 p.m. Around 4:30, they had already started to head back, took a few convincing photos that Nolan was failure to it, but did anyways. Again, this is very hard to read. I can't confirm any of this, guys. This is all strong on the ledge of allegedly, but again, these letters are out there, so I thought it was important to read it. Again, some of this writing looks like it could be a female because they've hearted a few things. I just want to put this out there. I have forwarded all these letters to Ben Crump and his attorneys just in case there is anything real to this. But again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. This is just, in my opinion, something that is interesting to share. Secret Service Sam out, Samson for president of the world.
So many questions concerning the
deeper investigators look into Nolan Wells' final hours, the more unanswered questions seem to surface. And one of the biggest now centers on a mysterious message. Who actually sent it? Why was it sent? And could it have any connection to what happened to Nolan? Then there is another question that continues to trouble people following the case. Why have some potential witnesses remained silent? Online viewers have pointed to details they believe do not fit neatly together. Why would Nolan remain behind without his phone or his keys? Was there a simple explanation for that decision, or was something happening that others have yet to fully explain? Some people believe Nolan's friends may know more than they have publicly shared. Others reject that theory entirely, arguing that the available evidence could still be consistent with a tragic accident. And then there are the unresolved details. Questions surrounding the timeline, missing or deleted messages, and the events that unfolded during Nolan's final hours. At this point, several theories are circulating, but theories are not proof. The challenge is separating what is actually known from what people believe may have happened. So what really happened to Nolan Wells? And as more messages reportedly connected to unidentified witnesses come to light, another layer of the mystery begins to emerge. Let's look at what these messages say.
This white woman right here is claiming that she was one of the last people who saw Nolan, and when she saw Nolan, he was involved in an altercation with somebody who, in her words, is going to go to jail based on what she witnessed. Now, somehow, some way, and a lot of you guys probably already suspect this, somehow, some way, Officer Tatum is involved somewhere in this equation, in which you will find out at some point in this video. But here is what she has to say. Now, her page is on private, so we only have people reading what she said on her page. So this is what she had to say in terms of, the last sighting of Nolan. Now, apparently, she didn't just see Nolan by herself. It was her and her husband who witnessed this.
I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left. Then she said she messaged one of the individuals that she saw, hey, I just want to say I was a passenger on another boat and I saw the argument between you guys and we'll go to the police with this information. I also have video footage. My husband doesn't show much, but it shows the argument that was taken and how you guys were upset at Nolan because
it remains unclear whether those videos were ever provided to investigators or whether the people behind the posts ever gave an official statement to police. What we do know is that the post being discussed was reportedly taken directly from their TikTok account and read aloud by Secret Service Sam, but there is a reason so many basic questions remain unanswered. According to the commentary surrounding the case, the district attorney's office and prosecutors have generally not provided information to people who are not attorneys representing one of the individuals involved. That has reportedly made it difficult for even the family to determine whether certain information was ever submitted, whether investigators followed up, or whether potential witnesses were formally interviewed. Then, another issue enters the picture. Questions have been raised over how certain individuals, including an attorney, appeared to have information concerning Nolan Wells' autopsy before that information was reportedly available to Nolan's parents and their attorney, Chris Crump. If the information was supposed to remain confidential, how did some people appear to know about it so early? That question has fueled even more suspicion online, but suspicion alone does not establish what actually happened. And that distinction matters, because there is another reaction to this case that some commentators believe deserves closer attention. Before reaching any conclusions, listen carefully to how certain people initially responded when confronted with the information. Some viewers have argued that the reaction itself raised red flags, but that is an interpretation, not proof. And according to the commentary, Officer Tatum's reaction becomes especially important later in the discussion. What exactly did he say or do? And why do some people believe that reaction could change how the entire situation is viewed? That is where the story takes another turn.
Public Defender's Office, they try a ton of cases. Philip, first of all, has she turned it into police? She said she was. If she hasn't, I give her no credibility at all. Look, I want this to be true. Why? Because I want the video. I want to see the timestamp on the video. I want to see, was he still on Horn Island at 4:30 when his acquaintances on the Triton boat left? I want that video. And if she hasn't brought this forward to LE, law enforcement, then it means nothing to me. I mean, if I know a young man turns up dead in the water, and I know there's a controversy surrounding this, I mean, we know she knows that because she's gone online and posted it, then why not hand it over to police?
Agreed. And it should go to the grand jury for part of their investigation. But I got to tell you, if I were cross-examining her, should this even go to trial, the first question I'd ask her on that 4th of July, what she had been drinking. Before that video got activated, everybody would want to...
Put him up.
Drinking and smoking. You know how many people were partying?
Okay, man. Have you lost your mind?
The frustration surrounding this case has reached a point where some commentators believe Nolan's family is fighting for answers almost entirely on its own, and one moment in particular has drawn intense criticism. An attorney was reportedly listening to a woman describe an alleged encounter involving Nolan Wells shortly before his disappearance. Her account, as presented in the discussion, was that she had seen Nolan involved in an altercation with another person. But instead of immediately focusing on what she claimed to have witnessed, the attorney reportedly asked whether the woman had been drinking. That response sparked an immediate backlash. Why question her sobriety before fully examining the substance of what she was claiming to have seen? That does not prove her account was accurate. It does not establish that an altercation actually occurred. But it does raise a legitimate investigative question. If someone says they witnessed a potentially important event shortly before Nolan disappeared, shouldn't the first priority be determining what they saw, when they saw it, and whether anything else can corroborate their account? Nancy Grace reportedly pushed back during the discussion, quickly moving away from that line of questioning and redirecting attention toward Tatum. And that is where the conversation became even more compelling, because Tatum's response to the situation has been singled out by commentators as particularly significant. What exactly did he say? Why did his reaction attract so much attention? And does that reaction actually reveal something meaningful about how the information was being interpreted? Or is the public reading too much into a single moment? Those questions remain open. But Tatum's response, as presented in the discussion, became the next major point of controversy surrounding Nolan Wells' case.
Brandon Tatum is joining us. So after all that, all you have to say is, was she drinking? That's your takeaway from that? Joining me is Brandon Tatum, former police officer, Tucson, now star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, who famously has interviewed the acquaintances who all say they had nothing to do with it. Let's just put that out there. He's interviewed them extensively. I want to talk about not what you want to talk about, Brandon Tatum, which is they had nothing to do with this, because I met them and I believe them. So noted. Can we talk about a potential witness to an altercation? And she seems to suggest it was over Katie. Why? Don't know what the altercation was. Maybe it was, hey, leave her alone and get on the boat. Or leave her alone, she's my girlfriend. Or it could be anything. But if there is a witness placing Nolan seemingly in the water, I can't tell that, but having an argument with another person, a partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation.
It remains unclear whether those videos were ever provided to investigators or whether the people behind the posts ever gave an official statement to police. T. Tatum's response immediately triggered this belief. For some commentators, the reaction was almost impossible to process. Had Tatum really said he had never heard about the alleged altercation before? The moment was replayed because viewers were questioning whether they had heard him correctly the first time. Wait, hold on. That became the reaction as the statement was examined again. Was Tatum actually saying this was completely new information to him? If so, why had he apparently never heard about the alleged encounter involving Nolan before? The discussion quickly shifted from confusion to scrutiny, with commentators replaying the exchange and challenging what they believed they had just heard. No, play that again. Because if Tatum truly had not previously heard about the alleged altercation, that raises another question. When did investigators first become aware of the claim, and was it ever formally documented or followed up? At the same time, there is an important distinction. A person saying they did not know about an allegation does not prove the allegation happened, and it does not by itself demonstrate that investigators missed evidence. But the timing of the statement became a major point of discussion, and once the clip was replayed, the focus turned completely toward Tatum's words. What exactly did he mean? And why did that single response leave so many people questioning what investigators may or may not have known about Nolan's final days?
Timeline.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real.
The accusation being made here goes far beyond simply questioning Tatum's memory. Some commentators are now alleging that his statements are inconsistent, and they believe this particular contradiction could be more significant than the others. The claim is that Tatum told Nancy Grace he had never previously heard about the alleged altercation involving Nolan. According to that account, Tatum reportedly said that no one he had spoken with had ever brought the incident to his attention. But then another piece of content entered the discussion. Approximately 3 weeks earlier, Tatum had reportedly spoken about that same alleged altercation on his own channel. And that creates an obvious question. If the earlier video is authentic and Tatum was discussing the incident before his conversation with Nancy Grace, how could he later say he had never heard about it? That apparent contradiction is now being highlighted by critics. But there is still an important question before drawing any conclusion. Was the earlier clip actually referring to the same incident, and was it being presented in the same context? If it was, then the discrepancy deserves closer examination. Because the issue is no longer simply what Tatum remembered hearing from someone else, it becomes a question of what he himself had previously said publicly. So the clip is worth revisiting carefully. Was this actually Tatum discussing the same alleged altercation weeks earlier? And if it was, why did his later account sound so different? That is the contradiction critics are now asking viewers to examine for themselves.
Received a DM from someone DMing another person. Now, I'm trying to leave these names out because I want to not mess this investigation up. I think law enforcement already have this. That alluded to the fact that, and I messaged this person because I want to talk directly to the person that I saw the DM from. And we haven't talked to this person yet. But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed to talk to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying, me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Now, the person did not say they saw a physical altercation. The person did not say what time they saw Nolan and this other person getting into an argument. Now, this is after Warren, their boat left. This may be somewhere around a little bit before 6. What I'm thinking at this point, with all that has been said, is that somebody knows exactly what happened to Nolan, or they saw him right before he died. I am not convinced that Nolan was just out there and...
According to the commentary, Tatum's earlier reaction to the alleged DM was far more definitive. At the time, he reportedly appeared convinced that Nolan had been involved in an altercation shortly before his disappearance. He even went further, suggesting that someone might know what happened to Nolan, and questioning whether Nolan's death was actually a drowning. But critics now point to a major shift in his position. They allege that after Tatum became publicly connected with attorneys representing some of the young men involved in the case, and after those attorneys appeared in interviews promoting Tatum's bourbon or liquor business, his account of the alleged altercation suddenly changed. Now, the same incident he had reportedly discussed weeks earlier was something he claimed not to have heard about. That apparent reversal has fueled accusations of bias and raised questions about whether personal or professional relationships could have influenced the way information was being discussed. But those are allegations, not established facts. And the controversy did not stop there. Within the last day, critics have also challenged the reliability of several people Tatum has described as sources. Some are now alleging that information previously presented as coming from those sources may have been inaccurate, exaggerated, or otherwise unreliable. If those claims are substantiated, it could undermine portions of Tatum's earlier reporting. But there is another detail that makes the situation particularly difficult to ignore. The person describing the alleged altercation reportedly gave a specific account of what happened. Then Nancy Grace asked Tatum about that same incident, an incident critics say he had already discussed roughly 3 weeks earlier. Yet this time, his response was reportedly that he had never heard about it. That apparent contradiction is now at the center of the criticism. Was Tatum genuinely unaware of the allegation when Nancy Grace asked him about it? Did he misunderstand which incident she was referring to? Or had he previously discussed the same event and simply failed to recognize the connection? Those questions cannot be answered by the clip alone. But if the earlier footage and the newer exchange are referring to the same incident, the discrepancy deserves serious scrutiny, because at that point, the issue is no longer simply what Tatum believes happened to Nolan. It becomes a question of how reliable the information surrounding this case actually is, and whether every claim being presented to the public can withstand a closer examination.
Her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
Number one, he's dead shortly after an alleged altercation with another male. We think over a woman. See, in my world, I put together both circumstantial and direct evidence. Direct evidence would be, for instance, DNA or a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is the timing of the alleged altercation and his death. Right?
Nancy,
it's hard for me to believe that there's some kind of altercation on Horn Island just before he dies, and they were not connected. That's hard for me to believe that.
Well, Nancy, she's not saying he lost the fight. She's not saying that he got beat up. If you look at the autopsy, there's no clear signs of blunt force trauma to his face or any of the vital areas that could kill him. So it doesn't appear that there's any indication that he lost a fight, that there was enough trauma in this particular...
The criticism of Tatum becomes even sharper when his earlier statements are compared with what he is saying now. 3 weeks earlier, according to the commentary, Tatum presented the information very differently. He reportedly said the people who brought the allegation to him were credible, and he went as far as questioning whether Nolan simply drowned. His earlier position was reportedly that even if Nolan and another person never became physically involved, someone may still have witnessed what happened to Nolan, someone who could potentially know how his final moments unfolded. If that was genuinely Tatum's position at the time, critics are now asking a straightforward question. What changed? Only a few weeks had passed, so why does the same information now appear to be receiving a completely different treatment? The allegation being discussed could be important if it were independently corroborated. A person who witnessed an altercation, or who had direct knowledge of Nolan's final moments, could potentially become an important witness. But none of that establishes that such a witness exists, that the altercation occurred, or that anyone witnessed Nolan's death. What has drawn attention is the apparent shift in Tatum's presentation. Critics argue that he was among the first people to publicly discuss this particular information, yet now seems to be questioning or minimizing the same claim. Why? One theory being circulated online points to Tatum's apparent business connections with people associated with the case. Commentators have highlighted interviews in which Verdict Bourbon was visible or promoted, and they have questioned whether those relationships could create a conflict of interest. Again, that is speculation. The presence of a business promotion does not prove that Tatum changed his reporting because of a partnership, but the question has become part of the broader debate over his credibility. And this is not the only claim involving Tatum that critics are now revisiting. Remember the earlier report in which Tatum said a highly reliable source had told him Nolan was using cocaine on the island? That allegation was presented as coming from someone Tatum considered extremely accurate. But according to the latest discussion, that claim has also been challenged. And if that information was wrong, another question immediately follows. How reliable were the sources behind the other claims Tatum presented to the public?
I was told, and you guys, please take in consideration that it's reliable sources. However, the only way to prove the truth in this is if I see it with my own eyes, if the law enforcement have the investigation of this, and also when the toxicology results come out. But people are messaging me and telling me that there is heavy drinking and there's cocaine involved. And there's a particular person whom I know this person's name. I'm not going to disclose it. I'm going to go to the police first. And then I will disclose it if it doesn't interfere in the investigation. But this person allegedly was offering people cocaine, and someone close to Nolan, one of his friends, told me that this person was offered cocaine and rejected it from this person. And I was also told, and this person told me that it's over 100% chance that Nolan was using cocaine during this period of time. This person said it was 150% sure that when the toxicology comes back, that Nolan will have cocaine in his system. Now,
150% if the toxicology come back, Nolan will have coke in his system. Now, here's the thing. Tatum said he was going to go to the police. We haven't heard any update on Tatum telling the police this information. So Tatum potentially knew of a potential drug dealer who could have given Nolan drugs that could have contributed to his death, and Tatum never went to the police, never told him anything. All right. And again, according to him, his source is the most reliable. Bro, he was damn near saying this is true. Like, yo, but once you reiterate, oh, this source have never told me bad information. This source have been accurate 1,000%. They've told me 150% Nolan gonna have coke in his system. Well, according to Nancy Grace and other experts, detoxicology is apparently back. And you know what's not in his system? Apparently coke is not in Nolan Wells' system. Right? So Tatum's quote unquote expert was lying. Tatum was lying. So now I can distinguish between what has Tatum ever said about this case that's the truth.
I know they're saying they're done with the autopsy and that it's complete, which means the gross findings in the autopsy room, the tox, the histology, that means that autopsy report is complete. They just hadn't released their findings yet.
And speaking of that, Joe Scott Morgan, I've heard the same, that the autopsy is complete.
Yeah.
There are reports that there is no cocaine in Nolan's system. That's uncorroborated reports,
Okay.
but a good source. No cocaine in the system.
Yep.
Joe Scott, when the body has been in the elements, such as the water, for that long, how can I confirm if he had been drinking or not?
Oh, you can still pull a BA, blood alcohol, or blood ethanol level, as it's referred to. And again, Nancy, we're not talking about someone that has been down for weeks and weeks.
Tatum is now pretending like he never heard about the altercation and he never heard of her, anything about it. And then we found out that Tatum's source that apparently gave him information that was 150% correct was actually wrong. All right. And Nolan was not on coke. Y'all let me know in the comment section, man, what y'all think about it.